And we are live. This is another episode of Deno Sessions. Thank you for joining us. And sorry for the delay. I was having trouble getting my mic to work, but it's not a big deal. Uh, Today we're so lucky. We are joined by Luca and Heyang, both people who worked on Deno KV. And yeah, we have a lot to talk about today. Um, yeah, how are you guys doing? How's your week?
Doing
How's everything?
doing pretty good. Working on fun projects today that are secret and can't talk about, but
I
it's
love
fun.
Top Secret. How are you,
We
Leon?
are
How's
not
everything
done
going?
shipping things.
Oh, you're
You're
muted.
muted, Hang.
Oh yeah, sorry. All good. Yeah, I'm also working on some improvements to Deno KV. Yeah, I believe it will be exciting.
Awesome. I mean, just the response that we've received so far from our community on Twitter and Discord, everyone seems to be very excited about KV already. So really excited to. And if you're in the comments, please, ask any questions you have. And if you're using KV, feel free to shoot us questions. I'll be moderating the comments from Discord and YouTube, and surfacing them to Luca and Hyung here. So feel free to ask away. Um, and with that, yeah, should we start with some demos or whatever you guys had in mind?
Yeah, sure. Maybe we can just play around with KV for a bit.
Sounds good. Yeah, Luca, I'm looking at the thing that you stream. I think you have to
Hey,
have
I need to share my screen.
All right, cool. And let me drop a link.
Fingers crossed it works.
There you go. Let me add it. Amazing.
Cool. Yeah, so this is KV. Anybody who hasn't seen it yet, it's a globally distributed CLI database for Deno, built right into Deno CLI and built right into Deno Deploy. And you can use it to store and retrieve values. And this little example here is just a little counter that you can count with. If anybody else goes to this URL, you'll see the counter increment on your side, and I'll see your updated values here. Yeah. I wonder if there's like anything specific that people would like to see us talking about with KV today.
I guess we can just talk about, just in case before people have any questions, we can talk about like kind of the decision making behind the design for it, like how do we choose KV over IndexedDB, things like that.
Yeah, sounds like a fun. Okay, so let's talk about that. So KV was really born out of the need for persistence on deploy, because we have this great edge compute offering that allows you to execute code all over the world, and it runs very quickly, and it's in a lot of data centers. But if you then hook it up to an SQL database that's, I don't know, in US East 1, your queries from Tokyo or your queries from Europe are going to be pretty slow. So KV was built around the idea that we need to have some sort of database within deploy that is A, really fast to read, B, is very easy to reason about, right? Like there's some other key value databases that other providers offer, and like other replication options for other databases that make it very difficult to reason about your data. And KV is really designed to be very easy to reason about your data, to be very easy to use, and to like have a very small API that allows you to do a lot of things, but means that you don't have to learn a lot of different API to actually use deploy KV. So this is, for example, the reason why we didn't use IndexedDB, because IndexedDB does not have a good story around things like data replication and things like choosing your consistency levels for reads and doing atomic reads. This is really important for us, that we try to minimize round trips between our edge servers and our database, because even though the database is replicated in a lot of places, this is still the slowest operation is the round trip time between the database and the edge server. So a lot of the API design is informed around trying to minimize this. You can this atomic operation, for example, allows you to do multiple writes at once. You can do multiple reads at once. Our list uses batching. And the way that our transactions work, our optimistic concurrency control transactions, you can read more about them in our docs. They allow you to sort of assume that in most cases, everything is going to go well, and things only start slowing down a little bit when things don't go through the fast path, like when there's contention on a row, or when there's on a key rather, not in a row. Only then do you have to worry about multiple round trips. And this is really useful because it means that in most cases, your application can stay really fast, and it only slows down because of this global distribution in cases where there's a lot of users writing to the same key.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is that because of the global nature of data storage, persistent data storage, having atomic operations is such a critical part to being able to build production-ready, mission-critical, stateful apps and things like that. Super interesting stuff. Yeah, so, and I think one thing we should point out is that the API is extremely simple. It's definitely one of the easiest things I've seen people work on. Yeah, why don't we make
so let's just write a super simple thing here. I set a key and I read a key and save it, and this is going to work. Hopefully. Let's see.
Live coding demos.
It works, right? There's a set operation and a get operation, and that's the core of this API. And I think this is pretty easy to wrap your head around.
Mm-hmm. Right. I know I've seen people talk about index searching and things like that. What are some of the methods around being able to retrieve keys and things like that?
Yeah, so Deno KV is a key value database, right? It's not an SQL database, not a database that's automatically indexed on values, which means that the only way to retrieve items is by selecting either a specific key or a range of keys. And this can be either done through the kv.get operation for single keys or the kv.list operation for ranges of keys. And a range can be something like, I don't know, all the keys that start with users, or all the keys between users A and users C. So that would be all the keys starting, all the users starting with A, or all the users starting with B. And this allows you to express pretty much anything that you need to, but it doesn't. The thing that makes that is different from SQL databases is that it doesn't automatically do indexing for you. So if you, for example, need to be able to query, you have users and you need to be able to query those users both by ID and by name, that means you need to store the users in the database twice at two different keys. Once as, I can demonstrate this real quick, once as I don't know, users1, and once as await kv.set users, let's say by name, Luca. And you can imagine this to be a user's object rather than a string. And now this allows me to query the users both by the ID, by one, and by the name, which is this string. And then I can do prefix searches. I can, for example, list all the users that start with L now. I could find all the users which have an ID between 1 and 10. So the big difference here between SQL databases and a KV store is that you have to do this indexing yourself. But we make this really easy through the Atomic API that allows you to do multiple sets at once atomically. If any of them fail, if any of them fail, all of them fail. So you can't get into a state where, for example, you've written just one of the keys but not the other key.
Yeah, that makes sense. Very cool. I know some people have been saying oh, is this a replacement for a production database? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I'll answer first, but I'll let Heyang answer also, because I'm sure he has ideas about this too. I think it definitely can be. like this is a production database. There's no question about it. This is a database that offers get, set, and list operations. It offers delete operations, and it offers this all at incredible speed and at varying consistency levels, and most importantly, transactionally. Like there's transactions. You can do atomic writes. You can do writes that only complete if certain conditions are true. Like this is a production database. The question is, are you willing to put in the work to write these indexes yourself? If the answer is yes, then you can use this as your database. And if the answer is no, then either you use a wrapper library that wraps around the Deno KV API and provides you with a higher level API, which may look more similar to a document database like MongoDB, or maybe more similar to an SQL database. Or the answer is you fall back to a database which is replicated in just a single region, and then you have to deal with slowdowns from the latency, but you have SQL. And this may be valid for use cases like analytics, where you want to write SQL queries that like have to do analytical processing on some data. And their latency usually isn't that important because you're writing, I don't know, you're reading this data, you're reading this data for a dashboard in an admin page, where latency is not as critical as something like listing out all the products on a product homepage, or giving the user back their cart when they visit your page, or handling sign-ins or something like that, which is very critical to be fast.
Yeah, that makes sense. Heyang, anything to add to that?
Yes, I want to. As you may have known, our Deno KV Deno deploy is powered by Foundation DB, which is amazing product built initially by the Foundation DB company and then currently maintained by Apple. A core philosophy for Foundation DB is that it aims to be the foundation, which is the very solid base layer for everything above it. Like, for example, as a KV database, you can also build document stores, SQL databases, queues, and whatever type of databases on top of Foundation DB. In the design of Deno KV, we want to do the same thing. We want Deno KV to be the foundational thing, to be the foundational layer that all kinds of high-level abstractions like document database and other kind of data stores to be able to build upon. We want it to be the foundation.
I love that. Yeah, I think what's really interesting is that there is an opportunity right now for someone, the community or someone, to build a higher level abstraction on top of KV that is like what Luca was saying, SQL or Mongo or something. Because I think that would really make it so much easier to use in a way that developers are familiar with, to have it in their app.
Yeah, I think what we're going to see very soon here is that you're essentially going to have different flavors of database that you can import with the URL. The Deno KV is built right into Deno, and it's like it's, as Heyang said, the foundational layer, the storage layer, the thing that manages transactions, the thing that manages global replication and consistency. But then on top of that, you can just import, I don't know, let's say something that looks like Firestore, or something that looks like MongoDB, or maybe even something that looks like SQLite, or something that looks like an SQL compatible database that is fundamentally backed by Deno KV, but on top of this exposes an API that is a different view that may be more higher level, which is often useful for business use cases. I think the way we're imagining this to work is, this is not real code, this is not going to work, but I can show you the idea. I don't know, import database from, I'm not going to put any URL here because otherwise people are going to try to use it. But you could say, for example, you want a database and you want to provide a schema here, like you want to have, these are all your tables. You want to have a users table that has some fields where you might have an ID field and you might have a name field and so on and so forth. And then you can use this database to do things like, I don't know, database.users.get by ID, some ID, and do things that way. And this is like a more higher level API, but under the hood, it's still backed by the same Deno KV, the same Foundation DB backing that that we exposed to Deno KV.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, hopefully someone out there is watching this and is inspired to go and build this abstraction. We have a question in the YouTube chat. Well, I just almost said Facebook chat. In the YouTube chat, someone asks, in local KV storage, so local KV storage uses SQLite. Can we replace SQLite with MySQL or Postgres locally?
So you cannot do this right now. Like Deno exposed no way to do this. If you want to use the Foundation DB backing, then you deploy to Deno deploy. If you want to use a different database, then you can, if you're so inclined, compile your own version of Deno that is backed by a different database backing. Like our database is very modular. The backing for Deno KV is very modular. As long as you uphold certain guarantees, it is possible to back this by anything else. I wouldn't suggest backing this by an SQL database because an SQL database is very much overkill for backing a KV, like a key value store like this. You should probably back this by, you could back this by any other KV store, or if you want to use MySQL, why don't you just use MySQL directly?
That's true. Heyang, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, I just want to add a few tips just in case someone has concerns on running SQLite in production. Sometimes we want to use MySQL or Postgres in production because there is better tooling around it, like replication, backup, or whatever. Just to mention that SQLite is perfectly a valid production database. It has all the strong guarantees provided by any other transaction database like MySQL or Postgres or Foundation DB. And for backup replication, there are plenty of tools to do that, like LiteFS, LiteStream, or SQLite. Just to mention that we have enough tooling to support the SQLite backend in production, so you can use it in production.
Awesome. Good to know. On that note, I think a lot of people were surprised by the SQLite locally and Foundation DB globally on deploy. Can we chat a little bit about how like some of the thinking behind choosing SQLite for the local CLI, as well as like what are some benefits from that? Because I know like when you use Deno KV, doesn't matter which environment you're in, the API is the same. So like how does that improve testing locally and things like that? I think that's something that's really important here.
Do you want to answer, Yang, or? Okay. So Deno KV locally is indeed it's backed by SQLite, but this doesn't really matter to you as a user because the API that is exposed above, or the API that is exposed in the Deno namespace, the Deno.kv object, this is exactly the same. And no matter what it is backed by, it behaves the same. It works the same whether you store a big int or an object or a string, or you have different types of keys, and like the limits that exist on both of these are the same. Like for example, the maximum value size is the same between SQLite and our Foundation DB backing on deploy. In essence, like it's not like running your SQL queries against either SQLite or Postgres. Like this is something you're going to run into a lot of trouble with. But KV locally and in production, they're the same thing. They're backed by a different database, but as an end user, you don't have to care about this. And this is really useful because that means you can write your queries, you can write your data schema locally, run it through local unit tests, through local integration tests. You can debug it locally. And then when you deploy it to Deno Deploy and it's backed by FoundationDB, everything is going to work exactly the same. There's no difference between how these work, which means it's totally valid to do all of your testing locally using the SQLite implementation, and then run it in production on Deno Deploy.
Yeah, I think that's such it's like another like developer experience, delightful moment for Deno developers, is that they don't have to know what's happening in the background. All they have is this really simple API, and it works perfectly.
Yeah, and I think, like, case in point, I can take this code that I've written here in the Deno Deploy playground, open a terminal, open Deno, paste the code in there. Oh, I need to run with unstable. Paste that code in there and go to localhost 8000. And I messed something up. What did I mess up? Oh, I changed my code. This code doesn't actually, it's not the one that's running. 1 second. Let me Control Z back all of my changes that I didn't actually deploy. Okay, save that. Copy this and run this locally. You're going to see it behaves the same here as it does here. And if I go back even further to the atomic counter example and deploy that, you're going to see it works in production. And if I run this locally, in the Deno CLI, it works the same. And this double incrementing is because the browser is sending a request for the favicon, by the way. Mm-hmm. This is not a bug.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's see. Is there anything that we can demo? Anything we should just build on the fly? I have my browser pointed to kvdemo.deno.dev if you want me to visit it. Oh yeah, I'm adding it to the increment right now.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, sure, we can build something. What should we build?
Let's
build
see.
Anything.
Yeah, what is like something simple that we can do in like 20 minutes?
We could build, I don't know, Heyang, do you have ideas? Maybe a to-do app? Everybody loves to-do apps.
Sounds like a paste thing.
Oh yeah, let's do that. That's a great idea. Okay, yeah, so little app that has an input field. You can paste some data in there, and it then gives you back a URL where that data is stored.
Awesome.
I think, but yeah, let's do that. Okay, maybe do we want to use a fresh project to do this?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, then can you, let me see here. Can you take my screen share off for a second?
Yes.
Thank you. Then let me just prep a VS Code folder here real quick.
Yeah, people have been asking about Fresh and KV, so if you're watching and you're curious about Fresh and KV, one project that's using KV with Fresh right now is SaskKit. I will drop a link to that in the comments, but if you take a look at that code, you'll see how SaskKit uses KV to do data storage for the database. And yeah, and hopefully this demo too will give you a good idea of how to use that as well.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
Okay, so first thing we do is let's set up Fresh.
Can we also increase the font a tiny bit?
Yeah, totally.
Thank you. Awesome. Perfect.
I don't remember the install command off by heart, so let me copy it. Oh, that is not it. Oh, I see. This copy button is now working. There we go. Okay. Installing some dependencies. We're going to use Tailwind. I'm using VS Code, and that's our Fresh project. Okay, so Deno task start. Oh, I think I have, yes, something running in the background. Cool. Let's see here. Browser. Let's pop that to the side. Should let me. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's delete some of the stuff we don't need here. and get started from the start. So what we're going to be building is a little paste app. What should we call this? Deno Paste. I call the folder Deno Paste, but I don't know.
Deno Paste works. Let's do it. Deno
Okay.
Paste.
Cool. Okay, so title Deno Paste. And then the first thing we're going to need is an input field that folks can post their data into. We're going to put this into a form. We'll set up the form in a second here. Let's do the UI first. Have a text area. Let's just follow what Copilot is doing here. That's okay. There we go. There's a text area. Let's style that a little bit. Let's see here. So maybe it can have a border. And do we need anything else? So this can be like text XL, larger text, some padding. Okay, this is great. So I can write stuff in here, and hopefully I'll be able to submit it in a second. Okay, so we write our text. What we want to do is we want to send this data that you've entered into the text box when you submit back to the server through a post request. And then on the server, we store this data in the database and return back a URL. And then we'll show that URL on screen, or maybe we'll just redirect you directly to the URL that has your saved text. And the URL will have like a unique string in the URL that is specific for the text you pasted. Actually, let's also add a button here, a submit button. And this now looks terrible. Let's make it a flex. Okay, cool. This looks somewhat better. Let's add more borders. No, that looks also terrible. You can tell I'm not a UI designer. Okay, whatever. I feel like this is good enough.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. So what we're going to use is we're going to use the form element that's just built into HTML. And what this allows us to do is have some input fields and a submit button, and it's going to automatically submit this as a post request when you either press enter or when you press the submit button. What we'll then want to do is Fresh has the concept of handlers, which allow you to handle specific types of requests, like either get requests or post requests. In this case, we want to handle get requests. And we're going to set that up here. To set up a handler, you just export this handler object from the global, or from the module, from the route, and then you have a get and a post. It's going to error here for a second while we're setting this up. The first argument of this is the request, and the second argument is the context. And for the get request, we'll just want to context.render. And let's see. Oh, this should be handlers. That's the problem. Cool. Yeah, so this should be context.render, and this is just going to render the page in theory. In practice, it's not doing that. Oh, wait, because I need to manually refresh. Haha, there we go. Okay, cool. And then on post request, we're going to get this request in, and it's a form request. So the way we get the form out of this form request is by using the form data property, or the form data method on the request. It needs to be an async object for that, async function rather. And then we can get the content. This is signified here by the name on the text area. So the name is content. So we need to get the content out of the form. And we'll just check if the user actually entered a string as the content. And if the content.length is longer than 0, just make sure we don't create empty pastes. And if they didn't, we'll return a invalid content response with error code 400. And if they did, we'll, I guess we need a KV store. So let's create a folder here, utils. Yeah, we'll need to here save this, save the content. And then we'll redirect to the new paste here.
I think that
So let's
content
implement-
destination should be equal to 0.
Oh, right, yes. If it's not a string or if the length is equal to 0, then yes, good catch. Okay, so let's implement the methods we need for getting and or for saving and retrieving from the database. So first, let's set up a Deno.kv. Let me enable Deno.unstable so we get the right type completions. Need to do this here also. Deno.open KV. Is this going to work? Oh, I think we need to include the unstable. Yes, okay, there we go. So we're opening the new KV database, and then we'll export a function to save a paste. And what this is going to do is it's going to take the content as a string, and it's going to return the ID that we saved it as. And first, we'll need to create a new ID. So I guess we can use whatever Copilot is suggesting here. Let's actually see if this does the right thing.
Let's use UID.
Yeah, this is fine. I like this more than UIDs. Let's do this. Copilot's doing a good job for once. And then we do kv.set, and we'll store this under pastes ID, the content. And then we'll return the ID. Okay, so that's our save paste function. We can use this in our post request here now. Save paste with the content, and this is going to return the ID. And then we can return a new response, and it's going to be a redirect. Maybe I should disable Copilot because it's like doing all of what I'm meant to be doing here. What we're going to be doing is we're returning a response with a 302 status code, which is the redirect, and the location header for where to redirect to. Yeah, so let's try that out. In theory, we should now be able to refresh this page and put something in here and submit. And then the URL bar didn't update, but it did redirect us somewhere. But we can't see anything, right? Because we didn't actually add the page we're redirecting to. Okay, so let's do that next. Let's try this out in the browser to see the URL actually changing. Submit that. And oh, I am not awaiting a promise somewhere. Haha. Let's try that again. And there we go. It's redirected us to the data that it has saved. Cool. So now let's add the page to actually display that paste. We'll create a new route for that. This route's going to be dynamic on the ID because we want it to match any ID after the slash here. We'll just copy this and we can start from here. Okay, so this page does not need a post request. This only needs a get request. And this time we're going to get context.params here. So this is the parameters that it parsed out of the URL. What we want is the ID. Let's get the ID. And let's start by just logging out the ID. And refresh that. And you can see it gets the ID out of the URL. So if I refresh a couple more times, you can see the ID updating up there, down there. Okay, so next thing we'll need to do is add the function to retrieve the paste from the database. And again, Copilot is doing all of my work, except it's wrong. So what we're going to do here is we're going to get the paste, and it's possible that the user supplies an ID to a paste that doesn't actually exist. And in this case, this response object is going to have a value of null. Let's add some types here to make the types a bit better. Res.value. So you can see here the value is either going to be a string or null, depending on whether that paste exists or not. We're just going to return the string or null from this paste and then deal with the null case in the get handler here. So what we can do here is if, right, so get the content by calling await.getPaste ID. And if the content is null, we'll return context.render not found. And this is just going to render the not found page. And if it was found, then we're going to pass the content to the render function here. And we're just going to add some more types again to make the types a bit nicer. And yeah, we can then retrieve the content from the props here. Page props. And then let's see, we can do props.data, and this is going to be that string that we passed to the render function up here. And if I pull over this, you can see if I write something in here, hey Andy, submit, I now have that saved. And I can visit this in other tabs, and it's going to persist at this ID now.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah, that was faster than expected.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2 pages and no islands. We didn't even use the components folder. Let's clean this up a little bit. Yeah, so let's recap through how this works again. So we have the index page that renders a form with a text area and a button. Let's close this browser so you can see better. When you submit this form, it triggers a post request. We handle this post request in the route handler up here. We get the form data from the request. We get the content, check that it's a string, and check that it's not 0 length. We then save the paste in the database. We do this by first generating a random ID, and then we set this paste in the database using the kv.set API. And then we redirect to this ID. This ID is a different handler here, which has a, when you visit it, it triggers this get handler. We get the ID, which we parse out of the URL from the parameters. We get the paste from the database. This get paste just calls kv.get, and this returns either a string or null. It returns null if the paste does not exist. If it doesn't exist, we return not found. And otherwise, we render passing in this context. And then, yeah, we render this function and, or this component rather, and the data props, this content we passed in, we put it out into a div. So let's try it one more time.
Yeah,
hello.
It's so simple. Yeah, awesome. Very cool demo. I'm going to go through a few of the questions. We have Ankur asking, any tips to get access to KV and Deno deploy sooner?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, so there's a survey that you can fill out when you join the waitlist. You'll get an email which has a big button in it, or a link, I don't quite remember, that has a survey in it. If you fill out the survey, we put it at the top of the waitlist, and as we invite users, we're going to prioritize those that have filled out the survey. And we invite users every couple of days in batches. We don't want to ramp on too many users at once, so we can sort of manage the feedback and make sure that the system behaves as expected, because this is still in closed beta. But yeah, you can expect to join soon. And if you really want to get access, then you can, I don't know, ping Andy on Discord.
Yeah, just ping me and I'll get you set up. We have another question from Bob. How hard is it to replace Deno KV with Redis?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I answer this. Actually, it is theoretically possible to replace Deno KV with something like MySQL or Postgres. Like I said, adding a MySQL or Postgres backend for it. But since Deno KV has some strongest guarantees in the database world, like linearizability and synchronous replication, it is hard to match with Redis, especially replicated Redis. Like across, you can simulate the behavior of Deno KV with something like Redis transactions. Redis transactions and this kind of stuff. But it will be hard to get the durability and consistency guarantee of Deno KV with a pure Redis solution.
Yep, that makes sense. Bogdan asks, are there any edge blob storage to go along with KV, like R2 for Cloudflare workers?
I am not going to say anything, but you can maybe tell from my smile that maybe there's something coming.
Nice. Yes. Under wraps currently, but stay tuned. And then the final question here is Lino's asking, what's the easiest way to retrieve an object from an ID and an email? Currently, Lino is using 2 keys for this. Yeah.
That's exactly the right approach. So there's let me pull up the manual here. There's a page on this in the Deno deploy or in the Deno manual called secondary indexes, which this is exactly what you want. You're creating a secondary index because you want to be able to like indexes are things that you query on, and you want to be able to query on both the ID or the name and the email address. And what you want here is you want 2 indexes, one for the ID and one for the name. And this secondary indexes page in the manual walks you actually exactly through this case of where you have users by ID and users by email, how you do this using atomic operations, and then how you query them using 2 separate keys. And the key here is that you want to always insert using an atomic operation, so that if one of the inserts fails for whatever reason, you don't have only half of the data, like half of the index is written. Because if, for example, now if this write fails, this write automatically gets rolled back, and then you'd never get to see a state where only one of the 2 keys is written.
Yep, that makes sense. Super helpful. I'll also include a link to the manual in the comments. I'm just going to check Discord real quick for any questions. It seems like we're fine. Awesome. Yeah, super cool demo. How easy would it be to be able to add something to Deno Paste where you can just see a list of all the
pastes?
IDs? Yeah, all the pastes.
Yeah, we can do that. I think that'll be like another 5 minutes here.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. So we don't currently store when the paste was created, but we can just like get a list of all the pastes, or maybe a list of, I don't know, 30 pastes.
Yeah.
So first thing we need to do is add a method to the database to do this. Function list pastes. Pastes, yes. And okay, I'm going to disable Copilot because it keeps writing the wrong thing. So there we go. Right, so what we need to do is KV has this list operation that allows you to list out things in the database. And what we want to list out here is we want to list out all the keys that start with a given prefix, with a pastes prefix in this case. So we're going to list out all the keys that start with pastes. And we're going to add a limit to only get the first 30 items. What this returns is an async iterator, which is not the same as an array. So we'll need to turn this into an array first. Let's how do we do that? Actually, this return value is not going to be right because we want it to return both the ID and the content, right? So we're going to have it return 2 items, the ID and the content. So we'll create a new array, and then we can loop over all of the items, the key and the value of all of the items in this for this list operation, and then add this to the returns array. So we'll get the first item from, oh, this is wrong. We'll get as the first item the ID, which is the first part of the key, because if you remember, the keys look like this. It's paste ID. So the second part of the key is the ID. Get that. And then we'll just use the value as the second item. And we'll return the array here. And let's just make TypeScript happy. Da, da, da. I think I spend like half of my time making TypeScript happy, but hey, at least I get nice auto completion. Cool. So then what we can do is we can call this list pastes operation. Pastes. Again, in the get handler, this time of the index.tsx. And we'll pass this pastes as an argument to the render function. So it'll be passed down to the component. And we'll, again, add some types just to make this nice. The type of the data here is an array of strings. And we'll do the same here. And then under the form, we can have a list. Now is the time where I would want Copilot to come back, but too late. I've already disabled it. We have the ID and the content. And we'll return a list item for each of these, which will contain, let's see, it'll contain the content, and maybe it'll contain a link to where to view that content on a separate page. Okay, there we go. And if I look at this now, I can see all of the pastes and links to each of the individual pastes. And if I was better at CSS, I'm sure I could also make this look nice, but I don't know. What is it? List disk, maybe? Ah, yes.
Nice.
Okay, well, this is, I'm not going to make it better than this, so I'm just going to have to live with this.
Awesome. Yeah, that was so simple to be able to just get a list of all the pastes.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. If you can, why don't you put that onto a GitHub so that I can link to it in the YouTube and people can refer to it.
Maybe you want to, let's do that together. We can link it to deploy then, and yeah, people can see how easy
it is. Yep.
Cool. So I'm going to use the GitHub CLI to do this. GitHub, or first git init. GitHub repo create. Okay, well, let's try it this way. Is GitHub down right now, by chance?
No idea.
This happens every so often, so. Oh, yes. GitHub is investigating degraded performance. Okay, so I can't push it to GitHub right now, but I will right after this.
Okay, yeah, no worries. We are coming up to the end of the episode, but there are a few questions left. We can just speed run through them.
Mm-hmm.
Scott is asking, well, I guess it's not really a question, so it's just a statement. That's fine. Eric is wondering, what is the future of Fresh?
Yeah, the future of Fresh is very bright. We're going to have some big announcements for Fresh coming up soon here. Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. yeah, stay tuned. Fresh, Fresh obviously is a project we care a lot about, and we want to invest adequate resources into it. We've built other things on top of Fresh, such as SaaSkit. Definitely give it SaaSkit. Definitely check that out. But yeah, stay tuned. We have a lot of exciting announcements around Fresh coming up. And then we have another question. Are there any plans to make Deno KV accessible outside of Deno Deploy, similar to other hosted databases?
We don't yet provide such a service yet, but you can easily build your own by writing a simple script to expose Deno KV APIs via an HTTP API.
Interesting.
There's I can't guarantee anything right now, but we're thinking about it.
Yeah, awesome. And then Fresh RSCs support when? I'm not sure what that means. RSCs?
React server components.
Okay.
And maybe, I don't know. We'll see. No
There you have
further
it.
comments on that.
Okay, all good. Yeah, and I think that's really it for today's show. Are any final comments or thoughts, Luca, Heyang, that you want to share with our viewers?
No, yeah, please try KV and give us all your feedback. We'd love to hear it.
Yes.
Bad experiences, good experiences, whatever you want. And like, if you built anything with KV, please send us links. We'd love to try it out.
Yeah, we've got quite some exciting features upcoming, and stay tuned.
Yeah, we are, as Luca was saying, we're currently in closed beta. Any of your feedback helps. Definitely check out KV, use it, give us feedback. And if you're building anything with KV, please DM me in Discord. I'd love to find a way to elevate your project to, our social media followers, our Twitter followers, things like that. And yeah, that's it for today. So thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Luca and Heyang, for your time. We'll be available on Discord if you have any questions. And yeah, that's it. See you, everyone.
Bye-bye.